Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending March 24th. We've got a big show tonight. William Bernanke is joining us once again from CG Analytics. He'll join us to talk about where the money is going early in the big dance. We also have another edition of Handicapper's Corner. Ralph and I are going to talk about filling out your bracket and some angles to look at in the tournaments. And then, of course, Ralph, Dave, and myself, we are going to preview Thursday and Friday's key games. We'll have a few games each day to preview for you. And then at the end of the show, as we always do, best bets. You'll get one each from the three of us. And behind the controls, Mark Seidel, making sure we sound good. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. Let's get this party started. And before we bring in tonight's first guest, I want to tell you about a special offer. If you are brand new to WagerTalk or Sports Memo, our sister company, you can get $20 to use however you like. Just use coupon code MM20, that's MM20, and we will give you $20 at checkout. Just enter that code in the coupon code at checkout. All right, let's bring him in. It's William Bernanke. Will, how are you doing, my man?
Oh, I'm great. Just got back from Arizona a couple days ago, but back to the grind.
How was Arizona? Catch a few games, have a couple cold ones?
Yeah, I was down in Surprise, so I caught a couple games there, the Rangers and Royals complex, so back-to-back days. It was really great, Definitely good to see baseball back and definitely get a breath away from March Madness.
You can't take this week off instead?
Nah. This week goes so quickly, I wouldn't even want to.
One question there in Surprise. Did you get the pork cutlet sandwich?
No, I didn't. Didn't get a chance to.
Oh,
Too many
man.
beers.
I don't know.
There's Marco talking food. We're talking March Madness basketball, and Marco's got to talk food on the podcast.
It's the best food truck at all of the ballparks, and I've been to all of them now. We finally crossed off the Milwaukee Stadium this year. I hadn't been to that one yet. So
I saw the truck. It was a long line, though. That's the problem. I should have sent someone to get it for me.
Well, I would have thought somebody with, your stature.
Marco sent Brian to get his, so just so you
Brian
know.
will do anything for a free sandwich. I'd rather buy two sandwiches and pay Brian to stand in the line than for me to do it. But Brian,
way to go. He's
got no pride. He'll take that free sandwich. All right, guys, if we got anybody still listening, let's get into this week's podcast. Hey, Will, I got to tell you, if our listeners listened to you last week, we talked about it with the conference tournaments. What a nice underdog. Iowa State, you brought it up, and whenever you told me about it at your house, I said earlier in the day I had spoke with another sportsbook operator in town, and he told me the exact same thing. Iowa State was getting steamed by the sharp bettors to win the Big 12. Nice payday if the listeners listened to you last week. Yeah,
they came in, and such an unpredictable tournament with the Big 12 and West Virginia winning a couple games early. Certainly changed some of the dynamics going into the semifinals.
Absolutely, but double-digit dogs to win a conference and get there. I don't care how they get there. I'll take that ticket and cash it any day of the week.
Absolutely.
And that's why you follow him at the Moneyline Guy on Twitter. Get good information from Will. Will, let's start it off. Conference tournament week last week. How did it end up for the house for you guys last week?
Well, it started off not so great with some favorites covering early. I think people kind of noticed that a lot of favorites were winning first few days, but it ended up great. I mean, the handle was great, and the results just got better and better as the weekend got there. And, multiple upsets, outright winners helping us.
Will, you're not going to believe this, but our listeners love when the house loses. So their favorite question is, what game caused the house the most pain last week? And what game did the house do best on?
Well, I'll start with the good results for the bettors here. Kansas covering against Texas was definitely great for them, not so good for us. Buffalo, believe it or not, covering over Bowling Green, which was somewhat of a miracle cover, a bad beat for the book, so to speak, against Bowling Green, where they didn't look like they had any chance to cover those 11 and a half points. That was great for bettors. And then a surprising one, well, not so surprising if you looked at it all year, but certainly surprising when you looked at all the games. So San Diego State beating UNLV was big for the bettors. I mean, that was tough for us. We really didn't get any UNLV money. And then as far as games that were good for us, I'm sure people could figure it out, but rehash them anyway. West Virginia beating Texas Tech was big. Michigan State beating Michigan in the Big Ten championship game, come from behind win, was, believe it or not, big for us. Michigan money was coming in all day. Auburn beating Tennessee that was big. And then Cincinnati winning outright against Houston was another big one. An isolated game there on Selection Sunday, and them winning outright wiped out any teasers, money line bets.
All right, it's Tuesday that we're taping the podcast, so a lot of time to go yet before we tip off to the first games on Thursday. But how has the handle been, and what game has gotten the most money? Not necessarily the sharp money, but the most action so far.
Yeah, handle's been a little slow to start out, but it's typical of every year. Monday, Tuesday, not so great, and then starting tomorrow, money just comes pouring in. But the biggest handle game so far is St. Mary's, Villanova, Nevada, Florida, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and believe it or not, Oregon, Wisconsin. Some big-name schools matching up there.
You know what? I have a question that wasn't on the list, but we're recording this on Tuesday evening, and the play-in games are going on. Do the play-in games get the volume of a Thursday or Friday game?
No, they're about equivalent to like a good NBA game. So what you saw Golden State Spurs last night, to put in comparison, that would be similar to the games today, at least the first game. Second game might do a little more just because the time. It's later. People are home from work here, and, East Coast is still prime time. But, yeah, that'll put it in perspective.
And Marco talked about which game had the most action. Now, again, we're talking early in the week on Tuesday, but tell us what early sharp action you got on the March Madness tournament thus far.
Yeah, there's some teams here that will raise some eyebrows. Cal Irvine, some sharp money on them. I think that has a lot to do with the way they looked in their conference all year in their final game, and also Dean Wade being questionable for Kansas State. Bettors are jumped on that just in case he doesn't play. New Mexico State seeing some sharp money. Vermont and St. Mary's against Villanova. Bettors fading the defending champs.
And from the future side of things, which teams present the biggest liability for the house to win the national championship?
Well, some familiar names here, most of them at least. Duke, Gonzaga, Michigan, and Texas Tech, which is the one, a little surprised there to see them being a huge liability, but people remember the run they made last year, and they're still buying them.
Will, Marco talked about what you said last week about Iowa State getting a lot of sharp action and them winning the Big 12 tournament. Let's talk about the March Madness as a whole or any of the regions. Are you getting an extraordinary amount of sharp money on any of those?
No, believe it or not, the regions have been pretty quiet, regional betting. I'm not sure if bettors are waiting to see how the play-in games go because they could affect it somewhat. Maybe not this first game today, but Belmont Temple and then the ASU St. John's game, that could affect some of the dynamics. So bettors may wait for those games. And also some bettors are taking the route if they like a team to win a region that may not be one of the favorites, so to speak. They just take them on the money line every single game, and the payout sometimes actually becomes greater than the actual number to win a region.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've talked about that several times on the podcast, that we actually would advise players that if they are not taking one of those favorite teams, you're much better off doing a rollover parlay. In letting that money grow much more rapidly. And then, of course, too, if you're taking that dog, when you get to the last game, you can cut back a little bit of the bet instead of doing a hedge if you want, take some of the profit out, or you can, instead of rolling it over on the money line, you can take the points and have a little bit of an insurance policy. There are a lot of different things you can do, rolling it over game to game. Will, what are some of the things going on at CG? I know at the Cosmo this week, there's a big party going on. You guys have one of your premier sports books around town located at the Cosmo. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah, the Hoops and Hops at the Cosmo. I mean, that's the way to go. You can get a single-day pass or a multiple-day pass, and you can even reserve a seat so you don't have to worry about getting there early and beating people to the punch there. And also our account, sign up for an account. You can still get $68 of free money, up to that, if you sign up before March Madness is over, the final championship game. So they combine the two. Combine these two, and you can bet like a pro without the hassle of waiting on any lines. That's really the way to go. Have those two things, and your March Madness experience will be second to none.
Will, tell us, there's a lot of people going to be coming into town that are listening to this. Tell us, number one, the properties you're at, and number two, just the advantage of out-of-towners don't need to live in Nevada to get an app. All they have to do is physically be here, get an app, go to the book, fund the app, sign up for it, cash out when you're done, and have the app for the entire time for live betting, halftime bets, all these games tipping off with delayed changes.
Yeah, you have to have an app if you're coming in town to bet March Madness, bet any of the tournaments, including any type of basketball, because those lines, there's no separate line if you're betting NBA or any other sport with the college basketball. So having the app is the way to go. The only time you'll ever have to wait on any sort of line would be when you sign up for your account and when you're cashing out your money. So that's the way to go. You can bet on every game that you want to bet on and get the numbers that you want and not have to worry about missing the tip-off.
In your properties around town, I know Venetian, Palazzo, in Tropicana, the Cosmo, Silverton, Palms. Am I missing anybody?
The M.
There you go.
Yep.
And great stuff as always. Good luck to you this week, Will, except the games that I'm on. I can't wish you luck on those ones. I'm greedy. I want to win all my bets. But best of luck with everything else, and try to get some rest. And you know what? I'm going to forgive you this time for not, gutting it out and standing in line for the best pork sandwich that you would have from a food truck. I'll forgive you this time, but, you don't know what you missed. I'm telling you.
Well, my friend's down there right now, so he's coming back here soon. In fact, a couple of days. I'll tell him to grab me one because he's just right near the stadium. So still can make up for it right now. Absolutely.
And if you do go to spring training, the Surprise Ballpark is one of my favorite. Not just because of the food. I do like that ballpark, the layout of that one. It's nice. Kansas City and Texas play at Surprise. And it's a great ballpark. There's some really nice ballparks out there. If you've never done spring training, it's an ultimate guys' week, to go out there, drink all day, go to the games. You can hit the casinos at night if you want to go play poker or whatever. It's a good trip. I enjoy it every year with Brian, and maybe next year, Ralph, you'll tag along with us.
Yeah, the problem is the beginning of that is in March Madness.
Well, that's why you have a computer. All right. Hey, Will, enjoy the week. Try to get some rest. I know, this is a hectic time of the year. We're all running on fumes during March Madness, but as soon as they tip on Thursday, that adrenaline will be going and we'll be good.
Yeah, just taking deep breaths. I think I'll figure it out, but, talk to you guys next week, and good luck with all your bets and everything, and we'll, catch up.
All right. We'll talk to you next Tuesday. We'll be taping early again.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Ralph and I are going to jump in and talk about March Madness, the brackets, how to fill them out, some angles for betting. We're all about betting, but we know you guys are going to be doing your brackets, so we want to let you know some tips as well for there. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's Handicapper's Corner time. Well, it's March Madness, and we're going to talk brackets, some things to look at during March Madness, and if we have some trends for you. Ralph, going to start. Everybody talks brackets. Everybody's going to make a bracket. You got all the office pools, everything else. And there's a lot of, things that people talk about. Is it a myth? Is it not a myth? Everybody loves to talk about that 5-12 matchup. Well, let's get to that one right away, because the 5-12 matchup, the 12 seed has advanced to the second round 34% of the time. You think about the seeding, that's a pretty big 12 seed, you're on the bottom corner there, yet they're getting there 34% of the time. And that's straight up. We're talking straight up. Normally those 12 seeds are underdogs and are getting plus money or plus points, so you're getting a situation where that would be a higher percentage against the spread.
One thing I want to preface with that is I think the committee has done so many things different this year, maybe lowering some seeds to keep people in areas. We talked about Cincinnati being a 7 seed. Well, they're a very high 7 seed. Why did the committee drop them to a 7 seed? Because they can play in Columbus instead of the 5 seed like Wisconsin going to San Jose. You have Oregon, a 12 seed. Would you rather be a 10 seed and travel to the east, or would Oregon rather be a 12 seed and play in San Jose in California in Pac-12 country where they don't have to travel? So the seeding has changed. So while we have some of those historic numbers, the committee is also transforming. So some of those historic numbers I don't think translate to the current way the committee is seeding, and that's something you have to pay attention to. One thing I want to put out when I fill out my bracket, Marco, I go backwards. I pick my teams I know are going to get to the Final Four. There's no reason to be cute or maybe pick an upset early that's going to screw something that you may think happens. If you think you have teams that are going to win and be there and like them, I fill them out first and go backwards in my bracket. Yeah, it may cost me an upset of someone picking early, but I'll tell you what. Those big upsets, Loyola Chicago happens once every 5 years where you have that seed making it to the Final Four. I get my Final Four locked in. In most brackets, those are the ones worth 8, 16, and 32 points. Those are the ones that are going to matter. If you don't have those teams right, nothing matters what you did in the first round, no matter how many cutesy upsets you picked, worth a point each. It means diddly squat later on when you get to April.
So, Ralph, what I think I hear you saying is you do things ass backwards.
Absolutely. When it comes to brackets, it's, you know what? I know who I want to win. I look who they're going to play, and I may pick some cutesy upsets in the first round, but again, those are worth 1 point. And you pick an upset that you maybe shouldn't have early, and then you have a different mentality in that matchup in the second round because the team that might have won is now not in there because you pulled an upset. So, I pick some upsets for I think teams can actually win outright, but I don't get too cute. You want to have a shot to win it all. The only way to win it all is to have the champion and at least probably 2 or 3 of the Final Four teams, but at least 2 with the champion.
Well, number 1 seeds, we make a big deal about the number 1s, and obviously those are supposed to be the 4 best teams. Well, 99.3% of the time, the number 1 seed advances to the second round.
Ooh, UMBC, what's that? Yeah. Maryland, Baltimore County? What?
Yeah, they beat Virginia last year. First time a 16 seed advanced. But what's really surprising, Ralph, is that when you get to the Final Four, 41% of the number 1 seeds are there. So that means most of the time it's
half,
only,
yeah.
Well, at 41%, it's less than half.
Yeah.
So, to get all 4 there is an accomplishment. And it doesn't happen that often for sure. In the championship game, a number 1 seed representing there is only 24% of the time. So that's kind of interesting. And when you think back, I know Southpoint was a sports book that did it has done it for the last several years. They early in the year, they'll put up like 4 or 6 teams versus the field, and you can make that wager. Seeing these numbers,
it's 4. Yeah, it's 4. Yeah, but it's Duke, Gonzaga. Boy, they took it down for a little while when Zion got hurt. No. And then he put it back up. And if you follow Chris on Twitter, he talks about it often. But, with Duke in there, it's tough
it's tough
not to do it.
But it's still the numbers, the percentages say, and that's what's so nice about March Madness. And everybody has a chance. Teams get upset. It happens. We don't have all 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four in most years. Anything else, Ralph, that you like to look at? I have one angle I'm going to share here, and then I'm going to throw to you for anything else in the NCAA. But I know you got some thoughts on the NIT and the CBI and all these other crazy tournaments that they have added in the last few years. This is one where we talked about it on video today, and I mentioned it here in this game. And it actually has 3 angles, and I gave the best one, which is what I talked about with Northeastern. If you play against underdogs, in the tournament that are plus 3.5 to plus 9.5 range. So single-digit dogs, 3.5 or more. You, after 5 consecutive wins, if you played against them, you would be 47-17 against the spread. If it's just 4 games winning streak that goes down, I said 5 or more because that's as high as this angle goes, and Northeastern fits that. But even if you go down to 4 and 3, it's a winning angle. 4 wins or more, it's 58-21 going against them. In 3 wins, it's 67-33 going against them. So definitely, and that is if the seed is 13 or higher. So you're a 13 through 16 seed. You're an underdog, single-digit dog of 3.5 to 9.5.
So you basically won a non-Power 5 conference, with the exception of a few of the better non-conference. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and you go against those teams. And it might have something to do with that. Four games in 4 days takes its toll, whatever. But those are dogs you want to go against. Ralph, what do you got for us?
First off, double-digit favorites are 30, 36, and 1, 45.5% the last 5 years. And, you talked about it, Marco, in videos. We talked about it. Well, your team gets up by 20-something, and you want to get some players in. You know you're going to play in 2 days. Your goal isn't to win the first game. There are no style points. You normally don't play those teams, but favorites of 20 or more are actually 10-7 against the spread, 59%, which makes favorites of 10 to 20, 20 and 29, 41%. So the 20-point favorites are elite teams, that their benches are probably better than the starting 5 that they're facing. So when you put in your backups, if you're a 20-point favorite, you still let those kids play. If you're a 10-point favorite to a 20-point favorite, you're probably not that good of a team where it tends to fade. Something we talked about, Oregon is a situation that we'll talk about later, but teams that are off a dog that's off a straight-up win, which means they won their conference tournament. And remember, only 32 teams in this tournament are off a win. There are 32 conferences. Only 32 teams come into this tournament on a winning note. Dogs off a straight-up win versus an opponent off a loss, 49-33, 60%. But here's one that people look at elite teams. What happens when you have a win percentage of 90% or higher? Well, that means you are Virginia, Houston, or Gonzaga. That means you have 30 wins. That means you only have 3 losses. Teams that are double-digit favorites with a win percentage of 90% or more, 3-16 against the spread. Again, your goal isn't to win one game. If you are 30-3 going into March Madness, your goal, you're playing a 16, 15, 14 seed, your goals are 3 weekends away from now. That's not an issue. And, I'll tell you what, our good friend Mark Lawrence, the Playbook newsletter, there is no finer publication out with March Madness. If you want an ATS number on anything, Mark's got it. The newsletter just came out now. This is Tuesday afternoon. It takes him that long to get it done. But I'm just going to shoot off a couple things from his newsletter. Again, these are courtesy of the Playbook newsletter. Mark Lawrence, go to playbook.com if you want it. Number 1 seeds off 3 straight wins, straight up and against the spread. So you have a team that's hot. Well, that would be Oregon if they were a number 1 seed, but they're a number 12 seed. Those seeds are 2-16 against the spread. Number 2 seeds that are favored by 9 or more, they do very well, 6-10 against the spread. How about this in the first round? Number 2 seeds, if you're a big favorite as a number 2 seed, it could be you're pissed off you weren't a number 1 seed. It could be that you thought you deserved better. Well, number 2 seeds that are favorites of 18 or more are only 3-14-1 against the spread. Same thought process. We talk about those 1 seeds and their expectations. Those same things happen if you're a 2 seed. And here's a positive one. Number 3 seeds off a straight-up favorite loss. So you are a top 15 team. You just lost your conference tournament finals or any time in the conference tournament. Number 3 seeds off a loss as a favorite, 31-14-1 against the spread. So that's almost 70%. That's a very positive note to play, that quality teams, disappointed, probably didn't win their tournament, knew they were going to be there anyway, may not have tried as hard. but they don't let it up first game here. So couple notes. Again, a great publication. A shout-out to Mark. You and I will be seeing him in a few weeks for the Florida Derby. So
looking forward to that.
For a little rest and relaxation and a few soda pops with the adults.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, there will be no soda pops on Ralph's order list that weekend. The thing I'm going to add to you here, two things. One, you talked about earlier today. You didn't mention it, and this is a big one. Huge edge in Game 2 when you go from the Thursday to the Saturday games and the Friday to the Sunday games. Teams with the better coach, that's a huge edge advantage with the short turnaround. You know, when you play the first game, you've got 4 or 5 days to prepare your team and your game plan. That, you know, evens the playing field from maybe a mediocre coach versus a good coach. You know, he can come up with a game plan. But when you win that first game, and now you got to turn around, and you're playing another game in 48 hours, you got 24 hours to put in a game plan and institute it to your team. The better coaches been there, done that, know how to do that. Big advantage for them.
Especially if you're a lower seed. Yeah. Because the upper seeds, I know, if you're a 1, 2, 3, or 4 seed, you are also looking at your second opponent Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you're the lower seed, everything you have is focused on that first opponent, and then you have to turn it around and then say, oh, we won. We have another game to play in 48 hours.
Another angle that changes from Game 1 to Game 2 because of the quick turnaround and some differences. I like unders in the first round because we talked about teams have nerves.
Point.
They have nerves the first game. They have different arenas that they've never shot in before.
Lines, the lighting, yes, absolutely.
Then you come to the second game, and plus you had more time for a game plan, so you could take away the other team's strengths in, you know, stuff. But then when you come back in 48 hours, now you don't have the butterflies. You got a game under your belt. You won, so you're confident again. You know, you just won. You're playing back in a building that you already played in, so you're comfortable with the surroundings. And now when you get to the end of the games, we always talk about when it's the end of the season, teams keep fouling to extend the season. Okay, in that first round, you've got more discrepancy with the better teams and the bottom teams. So if a game's a 15-point game, you're not going to sit there and foul the whole way down the stretch, the final 2 minutes, and add another 20 points in foul shots at the end of the game. The game's over. But when you're in the second game, they should be more competitive games because the winning team's advanced. So if you have tighter games, you're not going to be fouling as much. You might be a closer game. Or I'm sorry, I said it the other way around. You're fouling to keep the game extended because you're within striking distance. If you're within 2 possessions, 6 points, 2 3-pointers, you're going to keep fouling to keep trying to extend the game and keep it alive. That'll send the game over in the second round.
You know, Marco, also, everyone now has at least 4 days off except the teams that play Tuesday and Wednesday. And, you know, one thing I will point off is, you know, sometimes it's hard. Maryland's, I believe, is a 6 seed. Maryland right now has to plan for both Temple and Belmont. Yeah. They don't know who they're playing. So the first part of their practice has to be 2 teams. They have a disadvantage, especially more of a disadvantage in the second game, where their practice times are split those first 2 games in the play-in. Lastly, also, this seems pretty obvious, but teams that use their bench more and have more players that are deep. Auburn's very deep. New Mexico State has 13 players that average double-digit minutes. You know, if you go to KenPom.com, it's free to look right on the front where they have their bench minutes, and they give you a ranking of what they are. It's a great tool to look at when you get to the second days or the second game of a team in a setting. You talked about the overs for that situation. If you have a team that has a lot of guys that might push the tempo against another team that doesn't have as many bench players or plays a limited roster, you also get added points because of that, where they're trying to push the tempo in those second games.
Good stuff, Ralph. That's going to take care of Handicapper's Corner for this week. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, well, it's what you've been waiting for. March Madness is here. We're going to break down the first 2 rounds. We'll start with Thursday up next here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the Wager Talk Podcast. We're going to head into Thursday action, but before we do, want to tell you this segment is brought to you by uwager.eu. Get a 50% sign-up bonus when you use promo code WT50. That's WT50 when signing up. This is an exclusive offer to Wager Talk listeners. So head on over to uwager.eu. All right, guys, let's head into the action. Started off Thursday. Got a good one here, guys. We got Florida and Nevada. You've got Nevada.
Hey, you said Nevada.
I did. You know, you get crucified doing it wrong
boy,
here.
Especially you're a local.
Well, I'm a transplant local.
You've been here long enough to know. I even have to say it in my head all the time because Brian would just lambaste me whenever I said it wrong the first 20 times. You know, but I've learned now, and I do a podcast with Joe Ranieri, and every time he says it wrong, I go, Nevada.
Oh, that's right.
Ad. Just put the ad in there. And so now when we do a podcast and he talks about it, he goes, it's Nevada.
All right. Well, now that you know who's playing, let's see if we can figure out who's going to win this game. Dave, I'm going to start with you. Florida's the team that's been around the tournament, tested and everything before, out of the big conference, the SEC. But you've got Nevada that is a team that was in the highly ranked all year. And then at the end of the season, they still were winning, but boy, they weren't doing it at the betting windows. 1-7 down the stretch against the spread. But again, they were double digits in most of those games. They did enough. This is a team to me that at times, Dave, they look like they were bored with the regular season, waiting for the postseason.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's not that easy to just flip the switch and suddenly start playing well. And they're not shooting the ball well. And that's not something that automatically gets solved, particularly playing in a building they're not familiar with. All right? Now, the right Nevada is going to win the game. But I don't know if the right Nevada is going to show up or not. Jordan Carolina, he's good to go. That's obviously a huge plus for Nevada because he's so important to the team. They've got the brothers who are really good. Musselman's a solid coach. I think Musselman maybe rates an edge over Michael White in that department. My numbers say Florida, but my numbers are skewed somewhat because Florida plays in a really good conference and Nevada doesn't. Nevada comes from a middling, mid-major conference that had two really good teams and a couple others that were pretty good in San Diego State and Fresno State, and the rest of the conference was garbage.
Utah State.
Well, Utah State's in the real good.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There were two real good teams, two good teams, and then crap. It's a tough call because my numbers do say that I'm supposed to take Florida here, and that they're Nevada's a false favorite in the game. But having watched the two teams, this is a game where I think Florida might be ahead for a good portion of the game and will find a way not to win it late. I'd rather have Nevada at the end of the basketball game because two things. One, Nevada's been really good in the second half of games throughout the season after kind of lulling through the first half on a frequent basis. And the other is that Florida, not always the most trustworthy of teams late in games. So I'm probably going to stay out of the game. If you just want to go by the power ratings, Florida's the play, but I don't think it's going to be on my card, guys.
Ralph, you look at this one in Nevada, didn't get the job done in the Mountain West Conference tournament. They lost in the semifinal. And honestly, for me, I think it was better for them not to win that game. If they would have went up against Utah
State.
State.
For the Mountain West, I can tell you that.
Definitely.
Well,
but
they almost got 3 teams in.
Almost. But Utah State, they're a physical team. And the first 2 games were wars, especially the second game at Utah State. I think going head-to-head, for the third time might have taken something out of both of the teams. And I think they come in here a little fresher. They played the first game, got the win in that, and then lose in the second one. I'm not upset that they lost the Mountain West Conference tournament.
Well, again, you have a different mentality when you know you're in. We've seen that with a lot of teams. Same thing with Gonzaga. You know you're in. It's not the same effort on the finals. Yeah, you want to win, but that's not your goal. Your goal for Nevada and Gonzaga wasn't to win their conference tournament. It was to have more success in March. So, again, they did their league a favor by losing those games. But to me, it's this. You have a different mentality. Nevada last year was the underdog, the chic pick with Loyola for the last 2 years. They've been that. Now they're the hunted. Now you're a favorite against an SEC team. Now Florida can use we're an underdog to a Mountain West team as motivation. You look at rebounding. Offensive rebounding is one of Florida's strengths. That's one of Nevada's only weaknesses. And you have a defense. I mean, Nevada hasn't seen a top 20 defense all year. So, and the pace. I think the pace is going to hurt them. Florida, one of the slowest teams in the country. To me, it's this. Whatever team is up at halftime and has controlled the pace wins the game. If it's Florida and Nevada's frustrated, I don't think they have enough to turn it around in the second half. If Nevada can run the pace and get ahead of Florida and have a lead, I don't think Florida can come back.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and be the one on the other side of the fence here. I think Nevada gets the job done. I've not been impressed with Florida. I know they've had some good games this year. They've looked good at times, but too often, to me, they've looked just average in the SEC. And I know the SEC is a much deeper conference, but still, I like to see a little more life out of my team. I like Nevada. They're one of my teams. We did videos earlier today. This is one of my sleep. It's hard to say a team that's been ranked in the top 20 all year to be a sleeper, but I really do think they can run the table and get to the Western region finals against Gonzaga.
One more note that I think benefits Florida this year is that the SEC has been so offensively inept for so many years. It was just Kentucky and nobody. But with Tennessee and LSU having legitimate offenses this year, I think that helps the Florida team as well to prepare for this game.
Auburn too.
Oh yeah, very Auburn. Yeah, so three offenses where a couple years ago they didn't have any in that besides Kentucky.
I actually go deeper than that. I think Ole Miss has got a good offense.
Yeah. Kermit's done a great job turning them up. Yeah.
Very good year in the SEC.
Well, moving over to a team that year in and year out has owned this conference, but this year they didn't, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks. They're a team that, 14 straight years they won the Big 12. Would have been ironic the year that they didn't, that they got to the conference tournament championship game, had an opportunity to win that, and Iowa State got the job done against them. But they're taking on a Northeastern team. Ralph, I'll start with you. We've seen some heavy action on this game out of the gate. This line opened up at Kansas minus 8.5, and it got bet down to 7 right away. And, guys, it is not John Q. Public betting on Monday for March Madness. This is sharp money that's coming up early. The public's going to arrive here Thursday, and you'll see the game day action. But this is a significant move. Or are they just jumping on a trendy dog, or does this dog have a legitimate shot to win this?
Driving over to the studio, I listened to Dave and Teddy, and they had Jeff Sherman on from the Superbook, and he talked about this game. They actually have it down to 6.5, where it was a 2-point move that they had so much action on it. And I agree with the action, but it's pricing me out at this point where I'm not going to play against this Kansas. Okay, this is still Kansas. They still have athletes that can't compare to Northeastern. What I do like about Northeastern is you have 5 returning starters who have been there and done that, know how to shoot the 3, which is Kansas' weakness. Yes, Kansas has 4 freshmen, and you brought it up in videos, Marco, a great point, that these aren't the regular Kansas freshmen that played from November on. You lost Azubuike, you lost LeJared Vick, you lost a player preseason. So you have freshmen that are still actually freshmen in March, which is the difference with Kansas. But coming down to 6.5, I thought I would like Northeastern when the lines came out and the brackets came out, but losing that basket and maybe even losing more has priced me out of making it one of my top plays.
Yeah, look, Northeastern's they're a solid team. They're well coached, good fundamental team, and I think for at least a half they're going to give Kansas fits. But I don't know if they've got enough to win the game. And now we're getting to a point with the spread being where it is, where you can still win and you can still lose the game and cover 6 or less. You get the money, but that's not much of a margin, especially if Northeastern happens to be behind by a few points late. You can get those free throws at the end of the game, and your money gets blown up. I've had that happen a lot of times this year in college basketball, where I've been on dogs and covered for 58 minutes and then lose the game at the foul line in the last 2 minutes. It's been kind of a recurring theme, actually. I've done better with favorites this year. I kind of think that's the way this game might go, where I think Northeastern's going to give them a real game for 35 minutes, and then I'm not so sure after that. If you like the Huskies here, I think the bet's the first half.
And Ralph, you're a guy, and we talked about this in videos. This is a good time to plug the videos. Check the website tonight. They'll all be up. We did 12 videos in studio today for the first 2 rounds of March Madness, so be sure to check those out. And one of the things that I did point out, Ralph, is here's an angle during the tournaments, and you like angles that are league-wide. Applies to all college basketball teams in the tournaments. And underdogs between 3.5 and 9.5 points that are coming into the tournament winning 5 or more in a row, and they are seeded 13 or higher, 13 through 16. Those teams in the tournament have only gone, or if you bet against them, you have gone 47-17 against the spread. That would tell you to take Kansas. It says, the premise there is that you've got that attractive dog, and because they're winning coming in, you're getting a short number, but this is a team that's probably from a mediocre conference because they're ranked so high, with the seeds. So that's the only thing that causes me pause not to step in here and grab Northeastern, because my knee-jerk reaction is to bet against Kansas as well. That's where I saw it at, but that angle is going to keep me out of it.
Marco, third game for Thursday is going to be Seton Hall and Wofford, and Wofford comes in with a 21-game win streak and, ranked in the top 25 at Ken Palm now as far as their ratings go. And you look, they lost to North Carolina by 11, you lost to Oklahoma by 11, and you lost to Mississippi State by 11. Now you have them matched up against Seton Hall. Lead us off on this game.
Yeah, you look at this one, Ralph, and with Seton Hall, my concern with them is what do they've got left in the tank? They battled Saturday against Villanova in the Big East championship game that I'll admit I was on the other side. I was on Villanova, thought they would get it done, pull away in the second half, and they didn't. They had their opportunities, but down the stretch just kept letting the other team back in it. But I look at this Wofford team, and they've played well all year. And, again, it's going to be Goliath, David and Goliath here, but I think they can get the job done. I just think that too many people are going to look at this game, look at the names of the two teams, look at the conferences, see the line, and say, this is too easy. I'm going to grab the big name team. I'm going to grab the Big East team. And I think it's the wrong side. I think you can go with Wofford and get the job done here. This is one of my – I don't know, you can't call it an upset, but I'm going to go ahead and say that with them. I think they get through.
Dave, Marco with the Terriers. Think the Pirates have a shot here?
Yeah, but I think Wofford's better than Seton Hall. And I'll disagree with you on one thing, Marco. I think times have changed and that the public is more aware of teams like Wofford, who've gotten a lot of – look, Wofford's gotten a lot of attention all season long because they won some games early that were pretty impressive, and they never looked back, basically. They're a legit team.
Starting with that North Carolina, they were up at halftime, I believe, right? Yep. And that was a huge game at home.
Yep.
Yeah. And
here's the thing on the Big East. I think the Big East is an overrated conference. And part of the reason for that is there's no bad teams in the conference. Okay, the worst team in the Big East is still pretty good. But what that does is it creates a false power rating for the league. Because most leagues have a couple of teams that are going to drag the power rating down. And, like even the ACC's got a couple of real stiffs, and the SEC's got Vanderbilt, which is, they can't play at all. And to me, that's how you get a better read in a conference. The Big East doesn't have that. So to me, they have no real powerhouses, including Villanova, and no bad teams. What they've got is a lot of slightly above average teams, and I think that's where you put Seton Hall. I think they're a good team. I'm not saying they don't belong in the tournament. They're a good team. But I don't think they're a great team, and they are very reliant on one player. And if you can shut him down or at least contain Powell, you're probably going to beat the Pirates. Wofford's really good defensively, and they've toyed with the opposition. And when the big moments have come in games, all the pressure was on them in the NC Greensboro game, and boy, did they just killed them down the stretch in that game. This team knows how to win games. Their coach has been there for like 9 million years. He's been through this before. Wofford's won big games in this tournament before. I think they can do it again here. I think Wofford's moving on to the round of 32.
What I should have said whenever I said that the average people are going to look and say, just pick the winner. The guys that have been playing basketball all year, they know about Wofford. The guys that are just going to get into it now that it's March Madness because they want to be involved in the event, they're the ones that are going to still go with name association.
I don't know if they are or not. They might like Seton Hall because they like Seton Hall or like the Big East, but I don't know. I think those days are gone where, it's like, oh, that team, and then it's just an automatic fade. I don't think those are around anymore.
Well, like you said with Powell. Powell gets a double-double, they probably win because they need his scoring, but they need his playmaking too. When he gets the other players involved and he's scoring, they're a team that can beat anyone.
Terrific player.
I think the line is right. I don't have an opinion on this game. It's the game that I'm going to watch. I think Powell's the difference, but I think Powell needs to get to double-digit assists to get his teammates involved. And even if he scores 30 and only has 4 assists, it won't be enough to get it done. The Warriors are talented, have multiple scorers where, they need to get some scores from the other side. The thing about this is when you have Wofford and they're such a decent scoring team, not used to seeing a slow-paced team like Wofford. I mean, they're in the 250s, 260s range as far as tempo goes, so they're not one of those upper-tempo teams. That just means when it gets close, who do you want to handle the ball at the end of the game? And Wofford does have a freshman and a sophomore backcourt. We'll see how that would happen.
They're really good, though.
Yeah, but again, a freshman playing in the setting against Seton Hall is different than a Duke or a Kansas freshman playing. So, that's my concern with Wofford moving forward.
They play good defense, and they shoot the lights out of the basketball. They're one of the better.
They're a really sound team.
Yeah, so make it unanimous there with that one. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we covered some Thursday games. That means we need to do some Friday games. That's up next here on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's Friday, March Madness. We're going to take a look at 3 games for you on the Friday card. We're going to kick things off with Cal Irvine in Kansas State. Guys, this all comes down to injuries in this one with Kansas State. Does Wade go for Kansas State? That's a big question mark.
Well, let me ask you, and this is interesting because Teddy and myself talked about this on the radio show today. Would you rather have Kansas State minus like 6.5 without Dean Wade, or minus 9 with Dean Wade?
It's a good question. Definitely makes a difference for them.
Well, right now you're getting minus 4.5 or 5 either way.
Oh, I know. Look, and this is interesting because I tweeted this to one of my friends on Sunday. As soon as the matchup was announced, I said, "Well, there's your first round public dog. Irvine's going to be a really big public dog here."
What have you done for me lately? Everyone saw what they did.
And look, I've made money with Irvine this year because they're really good. By Big West standards, they are really good. But that's the thing. The Big West blows. It's a terrible conference. Okay, there's one good team in the conference, which happens to be Irvine, and they're a lot better than anybody else in that conference. But it's not like this is not a great team. Kansas State is really good, and they play great defense. To me, that there's only one way to play here, and it's not with the public dog. It's on the unpopular favorite, if you will. I think Kansas State's the right play here.
Dave, you talked about Big West as a bad conference. Well, Marco, we did a video talking about the WAC and who knows, New Mexico State, Grand Canyon, and Utah Valley.
The WAC's better than the Big West.
The WAC's better. The Big Sky's better. Ken Palm has them better. Ken Palm has the Sun Belt better.
And they're not better than anybody.
Yeah, so, let's put it in perspective. That's not just your opinion. That's Ken Palm's opinion with his ratings, which probably has the most respected ratings in basketball.
But mine's on the eye test as much as anything. I watch all these Big West games because they're all streamed. And I bet a lot of Big West games, so I pay a lot of attention to the conference. And Irvine is clearly, by a lot, the best team in that. And they could win a lot of games in other conferences, but they're still not that good.
To me, again, Dean Wade is a difference maker. He didn't play for him in the Big 12 title game or the Big 12 tournament at all. He missed 5 or 6 games in the regular season, and they were a whole different team without him.
Their offense goes through Wade.
Yeah, he touches the ball on every possession. Yeah. And the guy's 6'10", and he rebounds. Now, that's the problem. Irvine has 5 guys 6'8" or better. They have the size to get rebounds if Wade's not in. But to me, I look at Kansas State, and we were talking just before we were doing this video. If Wade's in and you're laying this number, I think it's a steal. Dave, I think you agree.
Yeah, and one other thing, by the way, they did make the Sweet 16 last year.
Yeah,
it's a pretty good program.
You are talking about, that had 5 starters back. So you have 4 guys that have been there, even if Wade doesn't play. So, coming in, Marco, we did a video today on this game, and I said if Wade's in, I'm all over Kansas State. If he's not in, I probably wouldn't back Kansas State. I'd have a no play. I'm starting to lean that maybe I would anyway, and if Wade's in, it would be a best bet type of play. So
the move then would be, we're taping on Tuesday. The line is sitting at 5 right now. Get it now, because that's going to be the best.
I suppose it could go. If it gets announced as out, maybe it could go to 4.5. But more likely, to me, is
he plays.
Even if he doesn't play, I think the line's going up on game day.
The public hasn't, we talk about it all the time. The money that you're seeing on Monday and Tuesday for the tournaments, for the most part, is what you would consider sharp or semi-sharp money. The general public is going to bet these games Thursday and Friday.
Absolutely. Moving on and looking at another game, Dave, you said the Mountain West has 2 very good teams and 2 semi-good teams.
Right.
Well, one of those very good teams is now a favorite against the Pac-12 regular season champion who rolled through the conference.
I got no argument
Marco,
with that.
Your takes on Washington being a dog to Utah State.
Yeah, well, this is a thing that you're looking at Washington in because they struggled a couple games down the stretch and then looked just pathetic against Oregon. And that's where we'll be talking about Oregon in a little bit, where all the love's going for Oregon. This is a team that doesn't look good right now heading into the tournament. They did all that they could do during the regular season. They dominated what I thought was a mediocre at best Pac-12 conference. For one of the Power 5 conferences,
they're not a Power 5.
They were below the Mountain West in my mind. Yeah.
It was not a good top to bottom for that team. And this is a spot where they're going to be facing a Utah State team that, even though it is the Mountain West, this team can play defense. And although I lean to Utah State in this game, I think the better play in this game involves the total. And I'm not going full game on the total. I'm going first half. And here's why. You've got Washington. Their strength is their defense. And it starts with their coaching and his pedigree. Yep. Mike Hopkins came from Jim Boeheim's system. He runs that Syracuse zone. And when you're not familiar with that zone and you face it for the first time, it's intimidating and it's frustrating for the opposing team. It takes some time to figure out how to crack it and so forth. And if you're having an off shooting night, if you're not knocking down shots from the outside, it's going to be a long night for you against that zone. So couple that with them not seeing Washington's defense and Utah State having a top 10 defense of their own, then throw in both of these teams are coming across country. You talk about not being set close to home. These two teams, they sent them all the way to Columbus, Ohio, both of these teams. This is bad scheduling for both of them and a new building to shoot in. So now you've got a defense that's tough, 2 good defenses. You're playing a team that Washington, it's been struggling shooting down the stretch. I'm going under first half in this one. I think they come out and struggle early, trying to get familiar with each other, familiar with the building, and then let's face it, it is the big dance. It's going to be butterflies for some of these kids. That can contribute to a slow start. All of that adds up to me to I'm looking at the under first half. It's at 63.5 in this game. That's where I'm going.
Dave?
Craig Smith's done an incredible job with Utah State. A veteran team because he inherited a lot of talent from last year, but they hadn't performed at all under Duryea. And he just put together a great season. I think he's a National Coach of the Year candidate, if you ask me. But the problem is that everybody knows it. Okay, and that's why Utah State is now a favorite over the team that won the Pac-12. Mountain West, technically tied for first, but technically second best, a second place team because they lost the tiebreaker to Nevada. Mountain West number 2 seed favored against the Pac-12 number 1 seed. That speaks volumes about how bad the Pac-12 is, by the way. I guess I'd play Utah State, but the number's going to keep me out of it. If it was pick 'em, I'd be betting it, but I don't want to lay 3 points. So I think the line's about where it should be in terms of creating an equal footing for both teams, and I'll leave it alone.
I like the Huskies. I think that, you bring the 2-3 zone of Syracuse, and what Syracuse does in March is teams aren't accustomed to seeing it, and they advance and they can move forward. You watch the Pac-12, and yes, those teams have now seen the Syracuse 2-3 zone 4 times coming to the end of this year, and they knew how to break it, and they knew what to do with it. And, yes, they are challenged offensively. I like your first half play a lot for the same reason. But I think Utah State, seeing that zone, they are playing solid defense. Yes, they got blown out against Oregon, but, it's a game that you're seeing that opponent for the third time, and you're seeing an opponent that was red hot. I
needed to win.
I side with the Huskies. Yeah, it's another situation where, Washington may have not known they were in until they got to the finals. Then I thought they were in at that point. Yeah. Had they lost in the first round, there would have been a lot more talk.
Could be, yep.
But getting to where they were, they knew they were in. So, I just throw that game away and say this. Their defense is legit. They have players that can steal the ball. They have the leading stealer in the country. They can play lights out defense. And for a team that's not accustomed to seeing that zone in a weird setting in Columbus, I like Washington, and I certainly like your underplay.
All right, let's stay with the theme of the Pac-12. And the flavor of the week team is Oregon. There's no question about it. This is a team that steamrolled their way to the tournament. And, we can say everything we want to say, and it's going to be the basis of my play in this one. The Pac-12 was weak and are going against a very deep Big Ten conference. But Oregon did play well down the stretch. This is a team that had a major injury at the beginning of the season. Their number one player, Bobo, Manute Bol's son, out. They had to rediscover themselves. But, hey, down the stretch, what'd they win? 8 in a row to finish the season. Rolled through, embarrassed Washington, beating them by 20, holding them to 48 points. But here's the thing. What made Oregon so effective, in my opinion, is they play opposite the way most of the teams in the Pac-12 play. They play hard-nosed defense, and they were a very physical team. The Pac-12, to me, is a finesse conference. You got all those teams, UCLA, USC, they want to run and gun, get the ball up and down the floor. They don't like this style of basketball, and so that was an advantage to Oregon. But guess what? They're going against the team that plays that style of basketball. Wisconsin plays slow down. They play good defense. They'll bang the boards with you and be physical. I don't think this is a good matchup for Oregon, and I think there's an absolute ton of line value for Wisconsin that is in their comfort zone facing what Oregon's going to throw at them.
Yeah, I don't trust Wisconsin. I don't think God's doing a good job with this team. Hap can't make a free throw when it counts, so you worry about that. But the scheduling spot in the power ratings clearly favor Wisconsin. Clearly favor Wisconsin. Oregon's coming off. They had to win 4 games in 4 days to get to the tournament. Otherwise, they're playing in the NIT, I guess. So they basically had 4 consecutive playoff games, and they accomplished their goal. And they are the flavor of the week. That's a great way to put it. But it's not a great matchup for them. And to me, the value, it's just, if you're a line value guy, you just got to take Wisconsin here because I don't care what metric you look at. Wisconsin's going to be, they're going to be like a 4-point favorite. And they're not, obviously. Sometimes it is one of those situations where you look at it a little uncomfortably and say, boy, the odds makers, they're pretty sharp guys. And they've hung a number here that's going to basically get every single numbers better on the Wisconsin side in this game. And that's sometimes a little bit scary. If you during the course of the season, if you fade the Ken Pom advantages, you do pretty well. And certainly fading the Ken Pom advantage would be the way to go here in terms of value. But
the Ken Pom advantage and the Las Vegas line have been the same this year.
But
Vegas
when you see a big difference.
Right. Oh, gotcha. So Ken Pom and Vegas are the same. You're fading one, you're fading both.
But when there's a big difference, Vegas has a tendency to be more accurate than Ken Pom. And in this game, there is a big difference. I'm still taking Wisconsin. I just don't think it's a good spot for Oregon. And I can't pass up that kind of value.
I am drinking the Kool-Aid. Let me just say that. Marco, I think you hit it on the head. After losing Bobo after 7 starts, you planned your entire offense and defense around him. You had to make changes. You have one of the premier March coaches in Altman with Oregon.
Oh, he's a great coach.
Been there, done that, knows how to get there, can out-coach anybody. You have Hap, like you said. If the game is close, you got to hack a shack or hack a hap, and he can't make free throws. No. And this Oregon team, I mean, was it a legitimate turnaround? Well, they allowed 61 points to UCLA mid-February in the second half of that loss.
Why do you keep bringing that game up to me? Because he remembers I had a 5% on Oregon in that game when
that started their streak.
They were up 16 at the half, and I'm like counting my money.
They allowed 61 points in the second half against UCLA, and since that time they've played 8 teams. They've only allowed one team to even get to 61, and that was Arizona State in overtime. They've held each of their 8 opponents to 42% or less. This is a game where the number can't be low enough for me. Even at it's down to 118, I still would lean with the under. And I think it's a game that is going to come down to the final decisions. I think free throw shooting makes a difference. I think the better coach makes a difference. And even though I've ripped on the Pac-12 all year, I'm still backing Washington and Oregon in this role because the lines makers adjusted for the Pac-12 being so bad with where they are.
Well, obviously you're taking Oregon, and it just doesn't bother you. I'm going to ask you, Dave, these teams that have to go the distance full throttle, 4 games, 4 nights, win a conference tournament, does it take something out of them?
It's tough to say because, each team is, Oregon looks like a pretty well-conditioned team to me. So I don't know how much it takes out of them physically. I'd like them. I'd be more comfortable with them if they were a dog in the game, because then they might still have that mentality of we're still not getting any respect. But look, here's the thing: they're the favorite. I mean, it's still.
It's gone back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
They opened up.
I just don't like. I don't like a team coming off a big underdog run, and I know they were favored. In the final game against Washington, and they deserve to be favored. But I still don't like teams that are coming off what amounts to an underdog run, because Oregon was clearly an underdog to get to the tournament.
Absolutely.
Going into last weekend. And then they win the 4 games, and now they come into the favorite the next week against I don't like that situation. To me, that's a potential bounce situation. I'm still not comfortable with it. I don't know if it makes my card or not. But if I play it, it's going to be Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin will be on my card. I just... This is a team
Wisconsin is back to a 1.5 and 2-point favorite now across the board.
Well,
so,
that might get me out, and that might get me out of the game completely, which is kind of where I want to be. You ever have a game where your stuff says you're supposed to play this, and you look at the game and you say, "Geez, God damn it, I don't like the game."
If you watched Oregon at all last week, forget the strength of the conference. You're watching the game and you're watching the team.
You want to go against this team?
They looked impressive as hell.
But you can compare Dave's comparison to the Big West and Cal Irvine against everybody else, because everyone else in that conference except Washington.
Wisconsin got knocked out by a potential Final Four team.
Yeah.
Oregon didn't beat any Final Four potential teams.
Yeah. I do have one system there that we talked about. It's NCAA favorites as a dog off a win against a team off a loss. Well, there's only 32 teams that won their conference tournaments that are in March Madness. Yes. And how many of them are dogs? Probably less than half. Probably only 25%. But if you're a dog off a straight-up win against an opponent off a loss, so you're not one of the other. So
Oregon is a dog off a straight-up win.
Yes, against an opponent off a loss.
Right.
49-33-1, 60%.
That's pretty good.
I mean, not crazy, but just it shows you exactly what you said. Having a dog that made that run and is now a dog again. So
what I'd be curious about is, what about a favorite, a round 1 favorite that won their conference tournament as an underdog?
I can get it out to you. I will tweet it if it's anything substantial.
I know.
Tonight.
Well, here's the thing. I know it used to be really good to go against those teams. It's leveled off in past years, though. Everything has a tendency to level off sometimes, and because there's like 4 of them this year. Auburn won as a dog,
right?
And now they're favored. Cincinnati won as a dog, and now they're favored. And that used to be a go against, but I don't know that it is anymore.
All right, good stuff, guys. Well, we're going to wrap this segment up, and when we come back, you know what that means.
What?
There's only one thing left.
What?
Best bets. Going to see if we can get you 3 best bet winners. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It is best bet time, but before we jump in, I got a special offer for everybody. If you are brand new to WagerTalk or Sports Memo, you can get $20 free That's right, $20 free to use however you want. All you have to do is enter coupon code MM20 at checkout. This is for first-time users. You can get $20 free. All right, guys, best bets. I'm going to start with you, Dave. Who are you going to for your best bet?
Well, we talked extensively about this game, and Irvine has been a real good team for me all year long. But this time I'm going to bite that hand that's been feeding me. I just think they're overmatched here. The Big 12 is really good this year. And I think Kansas State is still actually underrated. A Sweet 16 team from a year ago. They win the conference, or at least tied for first place with
my power rating had them as the best team in the conference when they were all healthy.
Over Texas Tech?
Yeah. This was in March.
Yeah.
Before those last couple games.
I know the Wade injury is a concern, but I just think Kansas State's too good for Irvine, and I think eventually they're going to put them away and cover what to me is a number that's too short. So I like Kansas State.
All right, let's head to Ralph. Where are you going, buddy?
I told you I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm not going to jump off it. Oregon's getting 1.5 for 2 right now. The lines climb back up. People are jumping on Wisconsin. I'm a huge Altman fan. I think he gets it done, period.
Dave, Ralph's got a bottle here. It's got a clear liquid in it. Do you think that this is really seltzer, or do you think flavored water, or do you think it's vodka? Because he is drinking something.
It says Fuji apple on it.
Yeah.
I've never seen an apple that's crystal clear like that. So
yeah, I don't know.
I think Ralph's full of shit.
Who doesn't have a vodka in their seltzer once in a while?
Okay, all right. So, all right. Well, guys, I'm going to go to the one I talked about, and that is Utah State and Washington, and I'm going to jump on that first half wager. Just looked at the board. There's still 63.5 at a couple books here in town. You can head over to get that. We're starting to see some 63s and even a couple 62.5. So some money coming in on the under in that one. This is just one of those things. You got two good defenses. You've got a new building. You've got the jitters of starting game one. And when I talk about these first half unders, guys, I talk about them in Thursday and Friday's games, because when they get to the Saturday and Sunday games, they'll have a game under their belt in that building, so they won't get off to as slow a starts as they would in that first game, first time in the building. So for Friday night, Utah State, Washington under 63.5. That is my best bet, and that is going to wrap up this week's show. I want to thank our guest, William Bernanke, for joining us once again, as he does each and every week. My partners in crime, Dave Cokin and Ralph Michaels. Mark Seidel for making sure we sound good. Big shout-out to Johnny Detroit, who sees that this podcast is available everywhere. And a little special shout-out to Mrs. Johnny Detroit. Happy birthday, Paula. Sorry that we got Johnny working a little bit on your birthday, but, the listeners want to hear this podcast. So you can download us on iTunes, Spotify. You can listen on Spotify, Google Play, and our iHeartRadio. Last but not least, thanks to you guys, our loyal listeners. If it wouldn't be for you guys, we wouldn't be doing this podcast. And until next week, I'm Marco D'Angelo. Let's cash some tickets. Enjoy the games. It is the madness known as March. Talk to you next week. We'll be back Tuesday again next week.